In this lesson, we're going to look at Bootstrap forms. So just like tables, there's a lot of built-in options within Bootstrap, and it really allows you to present your content in a much user-friendlier fashion to your web users that are using your website or your web application. And forms is going to deliver quite a bit of really nice styling that's built in right out of the box with Bootstrap. So let's open up our editor and try out some of the different form classes that are available. So first let's create a form. And then within a form, so the way that forms are divided, we've got this thing called a form group. So essentially it uses, it gives you the ability to group different form elements together and group them together and have them presented in a much more presentable way. So let's create some divs, and the same idea is with what we were doing earlier with Bootstrap is we're always creating these elements, and then within these elements this is where we've got the contents where we apply the styling in order to present that element the way that we're intending it to look. And this is the real beauty of Bootstrap, because we have the ability to just dive into these our HTML code, and we don't have to really do a lot with CSS. We don't have to do a lot of thinking about CSS. Once we get familiar with the different classes that are available, we can really easily build out our web content. So first of all, within a form, we typically apply a label. So we would have a label for, and we give it, we attach it to the ID of the form or the input field. So this will just be first. So for first name, we're going to attach this label of first name. And this is all within the form group because it all has to do with that same element. So we'll do an input, and this is going to be an input type. It's going to be a regular text type. And we can also see, so first of all, let's just create that text type. So I'm going to give it an ID of first name, so that I can attach it to the label and close that off. And I'm going to copy this out. So I'm going to do another one for last name. So just so we have two different inputs there. Actually, this should be last and last name there. So let's check out what this looks like now. So now we've got a very typical form, and this should also be updated to last name. And I'm going to uppercase this. So there we go. So we've got our label and we've got our form groups, and we see when we're adding in this form group, it nicely brings it together. So really we're not seeing too much, but we see that there is a bit of styling. So when I remove the form group, we've got some slight variation, but it just gives us the ability to bring all of that content together, and as well it makes it more readable. So when you're looking through this content at a later point, you can say, okay, well, this is all of these elements here are grouped together. So we did see that we had some options here for form control. So we have some options to control our different inputs to format the way our actual content is being presented. So we've got two text fields there. We've also got password. So we've got some of the HTML formatted fields as well. So we can update those. So let's edit and add in some form control into that field. So let's start adding in some Bootstrap classes. So class, and the first class that I wanted to add in is form control. And once we add that form control, we get a much different presentation of how we're representing our content there. So right away, the form control automatically formats it and brings it all the way across. So this is a really nice type of option because it gives us the ability to really have those different input fields really stand out. And I'm going to add the same thing there for form control. So now when I save it and if I refresh it, we see that we've got a nice presentation of our different input fields. And I'm going to add a few more here, so input, and we saw that we had some different, so let's do my file. So this is an upload input, so give it an ID of my file and upload. And instead of text, so this is going to be a type of file that we're going to be looking to upload from the user's computer. And we see that it gets nicely presented as well with the form control. And with the upload, we can actually specify the different type of upload we want, or the different type of input we want. And if you're familiar with working with the different browsers, sometimes they represent these differently, so there might be some variation. And what Bootstrap does is it tries to bring it all together and have a more uniform presentation of your form inputs. So another neat one is if we use radio buttons. So you see these a lot within your web pages where you've got this form group and maybe you're asking something for please select. So you've got a number of different options that you want to present to the user. So you've got, instead of a label, we would be using a legend, because we're going to have a bunch of buttons. So legend, and I'm going to put that please select up there. And then for each one of the different checkboxes or radio buttons, we can set them as div, and we'll set up a class, but right now we'll just keep it empty for now. And then we're going to transform each one of these classes. So each one of these classes is going to hold a checkbox. It's going to hold a different radio button there, so I'm going to get rid of this stuff here and create that input. So each one of these, we're going to have a label for it as well, and so it's going to be type of radio button. And here within the form control, let's update this to an input. So see that now it's transforming. Instead of upload, we would have maybe something like yes, no, and so on. So this would be, so just call it radio 1 and radio 1, and this gives us the ability to add a bunch of other radio options as well. So this, and we also should set a value whenever we're using radio buttons. Always a good practice to get into. So this class itself is going to be a class called, we can specify different types of classes. So we can do something like form check. So see that it gets nice and neatly presented there. So if I had a number of these, so if I had another one that said no and radio button. And here I think with the radio buttons we should add in a name there for it as well, so we can tie them together. And let's refresh that. So now we've got the two radio buttons with the labels being represented there. And we have another one to put them inline, so if you like it styled within inline, we can do this as well, inline, and maybe update this one, form check inline, so that both the radio buttons there are inline. So you typically see radio buttons inline like this anyway, so Bootstrap takes care of this and it handles that ability to place that text inline. So last but not least, we're going to look at buttons. So that's going to come up in the next lesson, because buttons, there's quite a bit of information with buttons, so I want to make sure that we have enough time to cover through it. So buttons is coming up in the next lesson.